You give without hesitation. You receive with a flinch. Watch what happens the next time someone offers you something. A friend picks up the check, and your hand moves toward your bag before the plates have been cleared. Someone offers to drive you to the airport, and you hear yourself explaining that it is too far, too early, too inconvenient, that you can simply take the train. The refusal arrives before you have decided anything. It arrives as reflex. You have called this humility. You have called it not wanting to be a burden. You have told yourself that you are simply low maintenance, that you would rather give than take, that this is a kind of grace. But look at it more closely. Giving may cost you time, sleep, money, even parts of yourself, but it does not disorient you. Receiving does. There is a particular sensation that comes when someone does something kind for you and expects nothing in return. Your chest goes still, a small pressure gathers behind your sternum. Your mind begins moving before the kindness has even reached you. You start calculating, how soon should you return the favor? What will they need from you later? How can you make sure the balance is restored? Gratitude may remember what was given, but it does not need to erase the imbalance immediately. Fear does. What moves through you in that moment is not gratitude alone. It is the sensation of debt. You have been told your whole life that you are generous, and you are. That part is not a performance. When someone you love is in trouble, something in you organizes itself completely. You notice what others miss. You hear the hesitation beneath their words. You sense what needs to be done before anyone has asked. Then you move toward the problem without effort, without confusion, often without considering what it will cost you. It is one of the most fluent things you do. But fluency is not the same as freedom. Ask yourself what you are fluent in. Not only love, position. Giving puts you in a position. Receiving takes you out of one. When you are giving, you know exactly where you stand in the room. You are the one who is needed. You are the person who knows what to do. You are the reason something remains stable. Your presence is legible. Nobody has to wonder what you are for. Least of all you. When you receive, all of that dissolves. You become the one being noticed. You become a person with a lack, and the lack is visible, and someone has seen it clearly enough to move toward it. That is the moment your throat tightens. Not because their kindness is unwelcome, because their kindness looked directly at you. You did not learn to give only because you loved people more deeply than others did. You also learned to give because giving allowed you to remain in the room without being examined. That is the first thing you may have misread about yourself. You thought your generosity was simply the overflow of a full heart. Some of it was, but some of it may also have been the architecture of a hiding place. Consider what a giver never has to do. A giver does not have to say what they want. A giver does not have to risk making a request and hearing silence afterward. A giver does not have to discover whether anyone would move toward them if they stopped being useful first. You have built an entire relational life in which you rarely have to find that out. Through a Jungian lens, this is not merely a habit, it is a persona that has become so complete that it no longer feels like a role. It feels like character, the generous one, the reliable one, the one who does not need. A persona is not necessarily false. It is the shape you learn to take in order to be recognized, accepted, or allowed to remain connected. The suffering begins when it becomes the only shape you know how to hold. Notice how easily you can describe what everyone in your life needs. You could list it now without hesitation. You know who needs reassurance, who needs space, who needs encouragement but cannot ask for it, who needs to be approached gently, who needs to feel admired before they can hear the truth. Your attention learned to travel outward with extraordinary precision. That is one reason empathy can become such a convincing identity. You call it sensitivity, and it is sensitivity, but sensitivity directed in only one direction eventually becomes disappearance. Now try to describe what you need. Feel how the sentence stalls. Feel how quickly you begin to qualify it, soften it, or wrap it inside the word just. I just need a little quiet. I just need someone to check in sometimes. I just need a little help this week. The word just is doing something. It is shrinking the need to a size that will not disturb the room. You have needs. You have always had needs. What you may not have is the belief that a need of yours can enter a relationship without damaging something. So you converted your needs. Every need became a service you performed. If you needed closeness, you made yourself useful to someone. If you needed reassurance, you gave reassurance and quietly watched to see whether any of it returned. If you needed to be chosen, you made yourself impossible to replace. This worked. That is the part you may not have fully admitted. It worked well enough that you never had to develop the other skill. The other skill is asking. You are not unpracticed at asking because you are shy. You are unpracticed at asking without apologizing, minimizing, explaining, or offering repayment in advance. The movement has never been trusted with weight. Watch how you respond to a compliment. Someone tells you that you handled something well, and you are already moving away from the attention. You redirect it toward the team. You mention what you could have done better. You say it was nothing. You say anyone would have done the same. You say you were lucky with the timing. You think this is modesty? Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is evasion. You are getting out from under the attention before it can settle on you. Because attention has never felt entirely neutral, neither has kindness. Both can feel like a claim. You believe that when you give freely. But when someone gives to you, strings seem to appear automatically. That belief is not only a description of other people, it reveals what you believe must be exchanged before you are worth care. If someone gives to you and wants nothing back, then they gave because they wanted to, because you mattered before you became useful, because you were worth moving toward without having produced anything first. That idea does not have a familiar place to land inside you, so guilt arrives instead. Guilt fills the space where receiving should have happened, and guilt is easier. Guilt gives you something to do. It turns the gift into a task, and tasks are familiar. Within minutes of being helped, you are already planning how to restore the balance. The planning brings relief, and you may mistake that relief for gratitude. But the relief is coming from somewhere else. It is the sensation of returning to the position you know. The deepest problem is not that you give too much. It is that you do not yet know who you are in a relationship. When nothing is being asked of you, you are not only uncomfortable receiving, You are uncomfortable remaining still while someone looks at you with care. Your shoulders know this before your mind does. Watch them the next time someone offers you something you did not earn. They lift slightly. They prepare. The body treats a gift the way it once learned to treat a demand. It is not responding to this moment alone. It is responding to everything kindness used to precede. Somewhere along the way, kindness stopped feeling safe. It did not have to be openly cruel. It only had to become conditional often enough that your system stopped trusting the difference. There is a version of this you can trace back, but not yet. Stay here first. In the adult life, where the arrangement is still running, look at your friendships. Really look. Who among them has ever seen you struggling in real time, not after the crisis passed, not once the decision had been made, not when the pain had already become a story with a beginning, a lesson, and an ending? You do not bring people your struggle. You bring them the report, and the report always arrives with the problem already solved. Because a solved problem asks for nothing. It only asks to be heard. You have called this not wanting to burden anyone, but something else is true underneath it. If you bring people a problem that is already finished, you never have to discover whether they would have stayed for the unfinished one. That is the arrangement. You have arranged your life so that the question is rarely asked. In Jungian terms, what is postponed does not disappear. It goes somewhere. The needs you converted into services did not evaporate when you found a use for them. They went underground and kept their shape, and underground things develop pressure. You feel it sometimes, a flash of something you do not want to admit, when someone thanks you casually and moves on. A stiffness in your jaw when a friend receives everything you offered but does not ask how you are. A sudden exhaustion when someone comes to you again with a crisis and assumes you will know how to carry it. The feeling passes quickly. You are ashamed of it. So you bury it almost before you have noticed it. But it was there, and it will return. You call the feeling unfair. You remind yourself that you gave willingly, that nobody forced you, that the other person cannot be blamed for accepting what you offered. All of that may be technically true, and it still does not explain the resentment. When resentment keeps returning, the giving is often carrying something you have not admitted, and you were carrying something, not a demand for equal repayment, something much harder to say out loud. You were hoping that if you gave enough, someone would eventually see through it, that someone would look past the competence, past the reassurance, past the endless capacity to understand, and recognize what the giving was covering. You were hoping they would not merely accept the gift. You were hoping they would refuse the role you were performing and reach for the person underneath it. Not the hand offering help. Your hand, that is what you have been waiting for, and it is the thing you cannot ask for, because asking for it seems to destroy it. The whole point was that they would see without being told. So you gave, and they received, and they thanked you, and they left satisfied. Each time, something in you registered a small failure that you had no language for. They did not see through it. They saw exactly what you showed them, and you had shown them a person who needed nothing. The reaction arrives before the explanation. You are already tired by the time you realize you had been hoping. Your chest has gone quiet in that particular way. It goes when something you were reaching for has been confirmed absent again. You told yourself this was only about being good, about being the kind of person who gives, but goodness was never the whole story. Your goodness was real, so was the fear hidden inside it. And fear is the part that flinches when love turns toward you. You are still doing it now. In the way you received that last sentence, some part of you moved to agree too quickly, to understand it correctly, to become the good student of your own exposure. Even here, receiving something creates the impulse to give something back. Agreement, understanding, proof that you have absorbed the lesson well. Watch how the arrangement travels. It does not remain inside friendship. It followed you into work. You are the person others bring things to, not always because your title requires it, because at some point you became the person who could absorb what had nowhere else to go, the extra task, the difficult client, the unfinished problem, the tension nobody wants to name in the meeting. You notice what is falling apart before anyone else says it. You step in before the silence becomes uncomfortable. You take responsibility before responsibility has been formally assigned. And when you need help, something in you hesitates, not because help is unavailable, because asking would expose something you have spent years keeping invisible. It would reveal that the position is being maintained, that you are holding it rather than simply being it. This is what the arrangement made possible. It gave you a role you could keep recreating through your own effort. Nobody had to formally grant it to you. As long as you continued supplying what the room needed, your place in that room could feel predictable. Think about that. Your belonging did not have to depend entirely on someone else's decision. You did not have to wait to discover whether they wanted you there. You could arrive already useful. That was not generosity alone. It was a way of keeping belonging from resting completely in someone else's hands. Because the alternative felt unbearable, the alternative was entering a room where your welcome depended on someone finding you worth keeping, where you produced nothing and stayed anyway, where the invitation was not something you earned through usefulness, but something another person freely chose to extend. You have never learned how to rest inside that uncertainty. So you built another kind of room. You built it from competence, attention, availability, and labor, and you have been living inside it for years. What Jung understood about the persona is that it does not survive merely because it is familiar. It survives because it works. It delivers something. It protects something. The honest question is not simply why you became trapped inside the role. The deeper question is what the role paid you. Yours paid in certainty. Every time you gave, you knew where you stood. There was less ambiguity, less waiting, less need to wonder what someone felt about you. You made yourself legible through function. You removed the possibility of being misunderstood by removing the parts of yourself that would require interpretation. And certainty can feel worth almost any price to someone who once lived without it. Notice the mechanism. Giving does not merely secure your place. It allows you to arrive before the evaluation. If you are useful enough, the question of whether you are wanted never has to be asked directly. This is why even praise can feel destabilizing. A compliment places your value inside someone else's perception rather than inside the usefulness you know how to control. They looked at you, they formed an impression, they decided something about your worth, even when the judgment is favorable. It places you inside a process you did not manage. So you deflect, you redirect, you make the praise smaller before it has time to settle. You are not only avoiding attention, you are avoiding the uncertainty of being seen by another person and not controlling what they see. Now consider your closest relationship, the one in which you believe you are most fully yourself. Ask what would happen if you stopped, not dramatically, not as punishment, just stopped. Imagine that for 1 month you solved nothing, you anticipated nothing, you carried no emotional atmosphere for anyone. You arrived with your hands empty and your needs visible. Feel what happens in the body before the thought is complete. Something drops in the stomach, the chest prepares, a quiet panic begins forming around a question you rarely allow yourself to ask. Would they still want me here? You may not know. After all this time, you may genuinely not know, and the uncertainty is not necessarily proof that the other person failed you. It may be the result of an arrangement that was designed so the question would never have to be tested. You may have known abandonment before. You may have been left, ignored, or treated as replaceable. But what you have rarely allowed yourself to discover is whether someone would stay while you were needing something, not performing, not rescuing, not proving your value, simply needing. That is the bargain the arrangement offered, not immunity from loss. Protection from one particular kind of uncertainty, the uncertainty of being chosen while bringing nothing. So you learn to become indispensable, not because you wanted power over people, because being needed felt safer than waiting to be loved. Indispensability is not the same as closeness. It can keep someone near you while preventing them from ever meeting the person beneath the function. A person may depend on you deeply and still know very little about you. They may trust your competence, rely on your steadiness, admire your generosity, and still never encounter the frightened, wanting, unfinished self beneath it. That is the tragedy of the role. It can make you essential without making you known. Look at what happens when someone tries to give to you anyway. When someone notices the exhaustion, when they offer help before you have asked, when they see past the performance and move toward the person underneath it, you become busy. Suddenly there is a reason the offer will not work. The timing is inconvenient. The gesture is too much. You do not want them to go out of their way. Or you accept while performing so much lightness that the moment cannot fully land. You laugh, you minimize, you immediately promise to return the favor. You convert the gift before it has time to reach you. Over time, some people adapt. They stop offering in the ways you repeatedly refuse. Not always because they stop caring, because relationships learn their permitted movements. They learn where they are allowed to approach. They learn which doors remain closed. They learn that you will arrive when they call, but disappear when the attention turns toward you. Some people truly did fail you. Some took without asking what it cost. Some were content to receive and never learned to wonder what existed beneath the giving. But others may simply have accepted the version of you that was consistently presented. Over time, the two became difficult to distinguish. The instruction was often clear: do not look at me, look at what I am handing you. This is one of the costs you have not fully counted. You did not only protect yourself from disappointment, you also made it difficult for other people to reach you. and when they failed to reach you, the pattern gained more evidence. This is what unconscious repetition does. It does not merely recreate the past, it arranges the present so that the old conclusion keeps appearing true. You give, they receive, you feel unseen, and the feeling of being unseen becomes proof that giving was necessary. Every cycle strengthens the belief that created it. Eventually, you accumulate what feels like decades of evidence. People want what you provide. They take what you offer. They rarely ask what lies beneath it. You use this evidence to confirm what you already feared, that people are interested in the function, not the person. That usefulness is the only reliable form of belonging. That asking would expose how little is actually there. But the evidence is not entirely clean. You built much of the experiment. You controlled many of the conditions. You rarely ran the trial in which you asked clearly, remained visible, and allowed another person to respond. Something in you resists that thought. The jaw tightens. The mind begins searching for exceptions. Because if the evidence is not entirely clean, then some part of the loneliness may have been maintained by the very protection designed to prevent it. That is a difficult truth. It should not be rushed, and it should not be turned into blame. The arrangement existed for a reason. It protected you from something real. But protection can continue long after the original danger has passed. Notice what the arrangement has done to desire, not sexual desire necessarily, though sometimes that too, desire in its simplest form, wanting something and knowing that you want it. You may have become genuinely unsure what you like, not modestly unsure. Actually unsure. Which restaurant would you choose if nobody else had a preference? What music would you play if no one were listening? How would you spend an afternoon that belonged entirely to you? The question arrives and finds a strange blankness where a preference should be. This is not because you have no preferences. It is because preference is a need with a face, and your attention has been trained to move outward before your own wanting can fully form. Before you choose, you read the room. Before you desire, you calculate impact. Before you say what you want, you begin adjusting it around what would be easiest for everyone else. You do not choose the restaurant. You scan the table and produce the option that creates the least friction. You have called this being easygoing. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is a self that has learned to arrive already edited. And now the shape is beginning to strain. The arrangement was built for a time when each act of usefulness seemed to purchase a little more safety. But eventually, the giving stops creating anything new. The people around you become accustomed to it. Your generosity becomes the baseline, the atmosphere, the thing that is noticed only when it disappears. Nobody thanks you the way they once did, and you notice, then you become ashamed of noticing, but you are not wrong. What was once received as a gift has become part of the expected structure. You are giving more while feeling less visible. The people around you may not even recognize the labor anymore. They have never had to. The arrangement succeeded because it looked like your personality. And it has looked like your personality for so long that when the exhaustion began, you had nowhere to place it. You could not say, I am tired of giving. Giving was supposed to be who you were, and how can you become tired of being yourself? So you named the exhaustion something else: burnout, age, stress, a temporary phase. You did not name the deeper truth. The structure had reached the limit of what it could hold. There is a specific fatigue that comes from maintaining a self that has no way to be replenished. Sleep does not fully touch it. A vacation does not reach it. It is not only the fatigue of doing too much, it is the fatigue of a system designed almost entirely around outflow. You built something with no intake valve, not randomly. It was shaped during a time when receiving felt more dangerous than depletion. And it worked. It protected you from something real that deserves to be said plainly, without accusation, but protection has a shelf life. The thing that once kept you safe is now helping keep you unknown. And those two functions have begun to look the same. The breath changed somewhere in the last few paragraphs. It has not fully returned. You are not tired only because you give too much. You are tired because you have been sustaining a person who is not permitted to be filled. You could not sustain it forever, and you have already begun to fail at it in small ways you have not told anyone about. The failures seem minor. A message you did not answer for 4 days because answering meant absorbing something you could no longer carry. A birthday you allowed to pass without the elaborate gesture you usually make. A phone call you watched ring until it stopped, and then felt almost nothing. The absence of guilt frightened you more than guilt would have. You have started, quietly, to withhold, and you have not yet asked what the withholding means. You have called it limited capacity. You have told yourself that you are stretched thin, that this is temporary, that when the pressure passes you will return to yourself. But watch what happens inside you when you do not respond. Before the guilt arrives, there is something else. For a moment, there is relief, and beneath the relief, something sharper, a faint satisfaction. That is the part you have avoided looking at. The withholding does not feel merely restful. Sometimes it feels good, not peacefully good, good in a way that has an edge. Because withholding may be the only form of protest the arrangement ever permitted you. You were not taught how to express anger directly. Perhaps anger made rooms unsafe. Perhaps the people around you were already overwhelmed, volatile, wounded, or impossible to confront. Perhaps your anger was treated as disrespect, selfishness, ingratitude, or unnecessary difficulty, so you learned not to show it. But anger does not disappear simply because it becomes unacceptable. It changes form. You do not say, "I am angry that you keep taking from me." You become unavailable. You do not say, "I resent that you only call when you need something." You let the phone ring. You do not say, "I cannot continue carrying what no one notices I am carrying." You delay the message until the silence says it for you. And you have been calling all of this exhaustion. Some of it is exhaustion, but some of it is anger that was never given a language. Look at the people toward whom you have become most unavailable. The pattern is not entirely random. It often appears around those who have taken the most and asked the least. The friend who accepts every report but rarely asks what happened before the problem was solved. The family member who remembers you most clearly when something is needed. The colleague who has learned that whatever falls between responsibilities will eventually be absorbed by you. Your withdrawal has direction. It moves toward old imbalances. And somewhere inside you, those imbalances have been recorded. You may not have admitted that you were keeping score, but some part of you was. This is the shadow hidden inside the identity of the endlessly generous person. The ledger you believed appeared only when someone gave something to you may also have been present when you were the giver, not as a conscious calculation, not as a plan to control anyone, but as a record of everything you gave while refusing to acknowledge what you hoped might return. That is the reversal you have been approaching. You did not only give because you wanted others to be free of debt. Sometimes you gave while quietly hoping the accumulation would eventually make your value undeniable. You did not demand repayment. You did not name a price. You may not even have known there was one. But unnamed expectations do not disappear simply because they were never spoken. They remain in the relationship as atmosphere, as disappointment without request, as resentment without an accusation, as a feeling that something is owed, even though neither person knows what payment would mean. That does not make your generosity false. It means your generosity was carrying more than generosity. It carried longing, fear, protection, and sometimes a hope so deeply buried that even you experienced it only after it failed. If you had asked directly for what you needed, the other person could have answered. They might have said yes. They might have said no. They might have disappointed you. They might also have surprised you. But direct exchange would have made both of you ordinary people inside a relationship. One person needing, another person responding, neither permanently strong, neither permanently dependent. The arrangement protected you from that uncertainty. You gave without asking. And because you never asked, the account could never truly be settled. Not because you intentionally kept anyone beneath you, because the thing you secretly wanted was not repayment, it was recognition. You wanted them to understand the hidden meaning of everything you had done. You wanted them to see the care, the restraint, the exhaustion, and the unspoken need beneath it. And because that recognition was never clearly requested, nothing they offered could fully answer it. A thank you was too small. A returned favor missed the point. A compliment could not reach the original longing. The debt felt unpayable because the real request had never been named. This is where you were not entirely innocent, not villainous, not calculating, not cruel, but not untouched by shadow either. You participated in a relational economy whose terms were never spoken. You presented the giving as free while quietly suffering when it did not produce closeness. You insisted that you needed nothing while judging, somewhere beneath awareness, those who believed you. That judgment matters, not because it makes you bad, because it reveals the human being beneath the persona. The human being wanted something. The human being noticed when it did not arrive. The human being became angry, and the persona would not permit any of that to be acknowledged. So the anger entered the relationship indirectly, through distance, through fatigue, through a warmth that cooled without explanation, through a silence that the other person could feel but could not understand. Some people may have drifted because they were selfish. Some left once your usefulness no longer served them. That truth should not be erased. But others may have felt a tension they could not name. They may have sensed that receiving from you came with a hidden gravity, that every gesture of yours contained more meaning than they knew how to answer, that they could never quite reach you. help you, or stand beside you as an equal because every attempt was redirected. Your generosity did not make them permanently smaller, but it may have made mutuality difficult. They were allowed to need, you were allowed to provide, and neither of you knew how to leave those positions. You may have lost some relationships not because your goodness was false, but because goodness became the only language the relationship was permitted to speak. That sentence may take time to settle. And still, beneath the ledger, beneath the withdrawal, beneath the anger that learned to disguise itself as exhaustion, there is something deserving of tenderness. You did not build this structure because you wanted power. You built it because someone, somewhere, taught you that need was the thing that made love unstable. Perhaps it did not happen dramatically. Perhaps there was no single betrayal. Perhaps your wanting simply arrived too often at the wrong moment. It met fatigue, irritation, distraction, a distracted nod, a delayed promise, or that particular silence that tells a child the room already has too much to carry. It only had to happen often enough to become a rule. My needs arrive badly. My needs make things harder. My needs change the atmosphere. My needs may cause people to pull away. So you did what an intelligent child does when a variable seems dangerous. You removed it. You tried to become someone whose presence never arrived at the wrong time, someone who brought solutions instead of demands, calm instead of disruption, help instead of hunger. The arrangement is not proof of coldness. It is evidence of how early you understood the emotional weather around you and how thoroughly you adapted to it. But a solution that effective always has a cost. The cost is that you can be admired for solving without ever discovering whether you could be loved while unable to solve anything. You created the conditions under which the question rarely had to be asked, would anyone stay if I brought nothing? And because the question remained untested, it remained alive. That is the loneliness, not necessarily the absence of people. Sometimes it is the presence of many people, none of whom have met you without the offering in your hands. You have been standing in front of yourself for years, handing out useful things, competence, understanding, patience, solutions, permission, and the person behind the offerings has remained almost entirely protected. Now the arrangement is beginning to fail, and you cannot fully return to it. That is the actual crisis. It is not simply that you are tired. You have been tired for years. And tiredness alone did not threaten the structure. The crisis is that you can see the structure now. Seeing has interrupted the automatic movement. You used to give before you noticed yourself giving. Now you notice. There is a fraction of a second before each familiar gesture in which you feel the machinery engage. Someone mentions a problem, your attention sharpens, your body prepares to move toward it. The solution begins forming before they have finished speaking. But now, inside that familiar motion, there is an observer. A part of you asks, do I want to do this? Am I giving freely? Am I afraid of what will happen if I do not? What am I hoping this will make them understand? That half second changes everything. You cannot give with the same unconscious innocence anymore, but you have not yet learned another way to give. So the gestures sometimes begin to feel like performances, even when the care inside them is real. You hand someone what they need and hear the old transaction underneath it. You watch yourself becoming the good one, the reliable one, the person who never makes the room harder. And because you can now see the role forming, you no longer experience it as simply who you are. This is more unsettling than exhaustion. Exhaustion still allowed you to believe the identity was true. Awareness separates the person from the performance, and once the two begin separating, you cannot easily force them back together. But stopping feels equally impossible. Stopping would mean entering familiar rooms with empty hands. It would mean standing before people who have known you for years without immediately offering the version of you they recognize. You do not know what your face does when it is not reassuring someone. You do not know what your hands do when they are not carrying something toward another person. You do not know what remains when usefulness does not arrive first. Even now, some part of you is preparing an apology. Notice it, an apology to no one in particular, for being difficult, for being tired, for having anger, for needing time, for understanding yourself too late. The apology forms out of structural habit. It may continue forming long after these words end. Here is what you may not have admitted. Part of you does not want to receive, not only cannot, does not want to, because receiving threatens more than your independence. It threatens the position the arrangement gave you. If you truly receive, the old imbalance begins to change. You become another person at the table, no more self-sufficient than anyone else, no longer protected by being the one with more to give, no longer able to use usefulness as unquestioned evidence of your place. You would have to remain there on the fact of yourself, without earning the chair again each time, and you do not yet have enough lived evidence that the fact of yourself will be sufficient. That is not a belief you can simply reason away. Reassurance alone will not change it. Someone can tell you that you are loved, wanted, valued, and safe, but the nervous system asks a different question. Would they still be here if I stopped? The answer cannot be proven through words alone. It has to be discovered through experiences you have spent years avoiding, asking, waiting, receiving, disappointing someone, needing at an inconvenient time, allowing another person to decide how they will respond. You have not destroyed every opportunity for that proof, but you have made the evidence difficult to gather. You protected the question from receiving a bad answer, and in doing so, you also protected it from receiving a good one. An unanswered question once felt safer than a painful answer. Now the unanswered question has become its own form of pain. And here you are, at the age you are. The giving no longer works in the way it once did. Receiving still awakens the old alarm. The persona has become visible. The new self has not yet learned how to stand. There is no movement from here that costs nothing. Keep giving automatically, and you continue performing a role you can now see. Stop entirely, and you risk confusing withdrawal with freedom. Begin receiving, and you must tolerate the terror of having no immediate way to restore the balance. The relief you feel when plans are cancelled is not always rest. Sometimes it is the brief pause between incompatible demands, the demand to keep being who everyone knows, and the demand from somewhere deeper to stop abandoning the person they have never met. The old arrangement is running out, and nothing stable has yet arrived to replace it. What happens next does not happen only inside you. It happens in the room. You stop a little, not deliberately, not with a speech. You simply do less. You answer later. You solve less quickly. You allow a silence to remain where you would once have rushed to fill it, and the reduction becomes visible almost immediately. The people around you begin to speak. They say you seem different. They say you have been distant lately. They say it gently, most of them, in the uncertain tone people use when they are worried, inconvenienced, and unable to tell where one feeling ends and the other begins. Someone says they miss the old you. Feel what that sentence does. It lands like an accusation, and some part of you accepts it as one because the apology was already prepared. Of course, they miss the old you. The old you was extraordinary. The old you noticed before being told, arrived before being called, solved before being asked. The old you reduced the amount of discomfort everyone else had to carry. But the old you was also providing a form of emotional labor that had become nearly invisible. They are not lying when they say they love you. That is what makes the change difficult. Many of them do love you. They also organize parts of their lives around an arrangement they never had to examine. Now the arrangement is shifting, and the shift may reach them first as distance, unpredictability, or coldness. Some will grieve you. Some will grieve the access they once had to your endless availability. For many, the two will be mixed together. Do not rush to make them villains. Most of them did not understand the full arrangement. You rarely told them what the giving cost. You showed them a person who could carry more than they needed carried. And they believed what you consistently presented. That is not always exploitation. Sometimes it is simply the consequence of being believed. You handed them a version of yourself. They learned how to relate to that version. Now the version is changing, and they do not yet know what replaces it. Notice what you want to do when they become uncomfortable. You want to go back, not because you have changed your mind, because their discomfort becomes unbearable to you faster than your own ever did. That is one of the final lessons of the arrangement. It was not only about being good, it was also about keeping the emotional atmosphere stable enough that no one would have to look too closely at you. Now the atmosphere is changing. People are looking up. That is what has happened. And to the old system inside you, being looked at feels like disaster. Some relationships may not survive the change. There may be a connection in your life sustained largely by what you provided. When the providing decreases, very little mutuality may remain underneath it. For a moment, the emptiness will become visible, then the relationship may quietly close. You will call that a loss. It will feel like one, because it is one. A real history existed. Real conversations happened. Real care may have passed between you, but the relationship may also have depended on a structure that could no longer continue. Do not erase what was real simply because it was incomplete, and do not pretend the incompleteness was not costly simply because parts of it were real. Grief can hold both. You are not required to feel liberated merely because you finally perceive the relationship accurately. Other people will surprise you. Someone may notice that you are struggling and remain through the unfinished part. They will not wait for the polished report. They will not require the lesson, the resolution, or the reassuring ending. They will remain while you are uncertain, and you may have no idea what to do with your hands. The exposure may feel so total that you almost sabotage the moment simply to make it stop. Do not expect yourself to receive gracefully. You have very little practice. The first experiences may not feel like love. They may feel like being caught. The guilt will still come. This is what insight does not immediately remove. You will accept something you did not earn, and the ledger will open out of habit. Your mind will begin planning the repayment before the gesture has finished arriving. You will think of